Ever pondered why we sometimes behave in ways that seem irrational, even to ourselves? Could it be our ego at play? Today, we're embarking on a journey to unravel this complex aspect of human nature. We'll be peeking behind the curtain of our actions, thoughts, and emotions, exploring the role that our ego plays. We'll investigate its influence in our personal lives, our social interactions, and even within our families. Stay tuned as we delve into the depths of understanding the ego. The ego, a simple three-letter word, yet a complex aspect of our psyche. Our journey today takes us into the realm of the ego, a fascinating, sometimes misunderstood component of our identity. Let's start from the very beginning. The term ego was first introduced by Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. In Freud's model of the psyche, the ego stands as the rational part of the mind, mediating between the instinctual desires of the id and the moralistic judgments of the superego. The ego, in essence, is the I, the conscious self, the part of our identity that we consider our self. It's our sense of personal identity, our self-esteem, and self-importance. It's the voice in our head that tells us who we are, what we're capable of, and how we fit into the world around us. But here's the catch. The ego is not always our friend. It can become inflated, leading us to overestimate our importance, abilities, or value, often at the expense of others. This is the ego that people often talk about when they say someone has a big ego. It can be boastful, arrogant, and can create conflict and separation from others. But let's not demonize the ego completely. It also has a crucial role in our lives. It's the ego that gives us our sense of individuality, our drive to achieve, and our ability to establish healthy boundaries. It helps us navigate through life, make decisions, and stand up for ourselves when necessary. So, the ego is not inherently good or bad. It's a tool, a part of our psyche that we can learn to understand and manage effectively. When balanced, it can contribute to our success, happiness, and personal growth. In essence, the ego is like a car. It can take us to incredible places, but if we're not careful, it can also drive us off a cliff. The key is learning to be a good driver, to control our ego, rather than letting it control us. So we understand that the ego is not just about arrogance or pride, it's much more profound than that. Ever wondered how your ego influences your personal life? Let's delve into it. First, let's talk about relationships. Our ego can act like an invisible barrier that separates us from others. It often whispers in our ears, "I'm better," or "I'm not good enough." These thoughts can lead to a superiority or inferiority complex, creating unnecessary friction in relationships. Sometimes, our ego might make us hold on to grudges or refuse to apologize because we don't want to seem weak. This can cause rifts in our relationships and prevent us from forming meaningful connections. However, on the flip side, a healthy ego can help us stand up for ourselves when needed and maintain our self-respect in relationships. It can provide us with the strength to say no when we need to, and to assert our needs and boundaries effectively. Next, let's look at decision-making. The ego can significantly influence the choices we make. It often wants to protect its own image and will push us towards decisions that make us look good, even if those decisions may not be in our best interest. For instance, we might choose a high-paying job we hate over a lower-paying job we love, simply because of the status the former brings. However, a well-managed ego can also be a powerful tool in decision-making. It can give us the confidence to take calculated risks, make tough decisions, and step out of our comfort zones. Finally, let's discuss self-perception. The ego is essentially our constructed self-image. It tells us who we are based on our experiences, achievements, and failures. If we let our ego run wild, it can lead us to overestimate our abilities, or conversely, underestimate them, leading to either arrogance or self-doubt. Yet a balanced ego can provide a realistic sense of self. It can help us recognize our strengths and weaknesses and motivate us to continuously improve. It can make us resilient in the face of failure and humble in the face of success. In summary, our ego is a double-edged sword in our personal lives. It can lead us to form distorted relationships, make poor decisions, and have an unrealistic self-perception. But when harnessed correctly, it can also empower us to form healthy relationships, make wise decisions, and maintain a realistic self-perception. Remember, the key is not to eliminate the ego, but to manage it. It's about striking a balance between listening to the ego and challenging it when necessary. And this balance is not a destination, but a journey of continuous self-awareness and growth. Our ego can both empower and mislead us in our personal lives. So, let's strive to be the masters of our egos rather than letting our egos master us. Let's now explore how the ego weaves itself into our social and family interactions. In the grand tapestry of our lives, our social and family interactions form the colorful threads that intertwine and create the patterns of our existence. And in this intricate design, the ego can often play a significant role. Imagine walking into a room full of people. Each individual there is a unique tapestry of experiences, thoughts, and emotions, weaving their own stories. Ego, in this context, can dictate how we perceive these people and how we react to them. It can make us judgmental, causing us to form hasty opinions based on superficial observations, instead of understanding their complex narratives. For instance, if someone offers a differing opinion, the ego might perceive it as an attack, leading to defensive reactions, instead of a healthy exchange of ideas. It can create a wall, preventing us from truly connecting with others, hindering our ability to empathize, learn, and grow. Now, let's bring the focus closer to home, to our family lives. Family, the cornerstone of our existence, is where the ego can have far-reaching effects. The ego can create a power dynamic, a tug-of-war where instead of nurturing and supporting each other, we might find ourselves in constant competition. Consider a typical family dinner. A comment by a sibling or a parent can be inflated by the ego into a full-blown argument. The ego can twist the meaning of words, causing us to react defensively, turning a simple conversation into a battleground. Instead of a place of love and support, the family environment can become a space of stress and anxiety. Moreover, the ego can also affect our parenting. It might lead us to impose our ambitions and dreams on our children, stifling their individuality and growth. It makes us want to mold them in our image, instead of letting them carve their own path. However, it's important to remember that the ego is not inherently bad. It's a part of us, and like any other part, it's about how we manage it. Being aware of our ego, understanding its triggers, and practicing self-reflection can help us keep it in check. When we learn to control our ego, we can truly listen to others, understand their perspectives, and form deeper connections. We can turn disagreements into opportunities for growth, and create a nurturing, supportive family environment. We can allow our children to flourish as they are, celebrating their individuality. In conclusion, the ego can be a puppet master, controlling our social and family interactions, turning them into a theater of conflict and misunderstanding. But when we become aware of it, we can cut the strings, turning the spotlight instead on empathy, understanding, and love. Ego, when unchecked, can disrupt our social and familial harmony. Knowing the ego's influence, the question arises, how can we manage it? Well, let's dive into some practical strategies, and the first one is self-awareness. It's like being the silent observer of your own movie. You know, the one where you're the star. But instead of getting swept up in the drama, you're sitting back, watching it unfold. You're noticing the times when your ego tries to steal the show, to upstage everyone else, and you're recognizing it for what it is, just a part of who you are, not the entirety. Now, self-awareness is great, but it's not enough on its own. It needs to be paired with empathy. Here's why. Empathy is like the antidote to the ego's poison. It's the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes to understand their perspective. And when you can do that, it's much harder for your ego to convince you that you're the center of the universe, because you realize you're not. You're just one actor among many, each with their own story, their own joys and struggles. But how do you cultivate empathy? Well, it starts with listening. Not just hearing the words someone else is saying, but really listening. Understanding. Responding with kindness and compassion, and when you do that, when you really listen, you start to see the world from their perspective. And that's when the magic happens. That's when your ego starts to shrink, and your capacity for understanding and compassion begins to grow. The third strategy is mindfulness. Mindfulness is about being fully present in the moment. It's about focusing on what's happening right now, rather than getting caught up in what happened in the past or what might happen in the future. And when you're fully present, when you're truly engaged with the world around you, it's much harder for your ego to take over. Because the ego thrives on distraction, on pulling you away from the present moment and into the realm of what-ifs and if-onlys. So, self-awareness, empathy, and mindfulness. 3 powerful tools in your arsenal for taming the ego. But remember, it's not about getting rid of the ego completely. That's not only impossible, but it's also not desirable. The ego is a part of who we are. It's a part of what makes us human. But like any other part of us, it needs to be kept in check. It needs to be managed. Taming the ego is not about suppression, but about balance and understanding. It's about recognizing when the ego is trying to take center stage, and gently reminding it that it's just one part of the ensemble. It's about learning to live in harmony with your ego, rather than in conflict. And when you can do that, when you can tame your ego, you'll find a sense of balance and peace that's truly worth striving for. So far, we've mostly discussed the ego's challenges, but does it also have a positive side? Well, my friends, the answer is a resounding yes. The ego, often seen as a hindrance, can be a powerful tool when understood and used rightly. It's not just a source of conflict, it's a source of strength too. Let's begin with confidence. The ego is the part of us that believes in our capabilities. It's the voice inside that says, "You can do this." It's the force that propels us to take risks, to step outside our comfort zones, and to reach for what we truly desire. It's what makes us stand tall and say, "I am capable, I am deserving." Next, we have self-assertion. Our ego helps us assert ourselves in this vast, bustling world. It helps us make our mark, express our opinions, and stand our ground. It's the part of us that refuses to be overlooked or overshadowed. It's what gives us the courage to say, "I matter, my voice matters." Lastly, we have motivation. Our ego is a driving force that pushes us to achieve, to succeed, to excel. It's the part of us that takes pride in our achievements and yearns for recognition. This yearning, when channeled appropriately, can lead to incredible accomplishments. It's the spark that says, "I can do better. I can be better." Now, it's important to remember that while these aspects of the ego can be beneficial, they can also become destructive if not kept in check. Confidence can morph into arrogance, self-assertion can turn into domination, and motivation can become an unhealthy obsession. The key is to harness the ego's power without letting it control us. So there you have it. The ego, like any part of us, has its strengths and weaknesses. It's a complex, multifaceted part of our identity that can either hinder or help us, depending on how we manage it. Remember, it's not about eliminating the ego, but about understanding it, accepting it, and using it to our advantage. We've embarked on a fascinating journey into the realm of the ego today. This subtle yet powerful component of our psyche, with its dual nature, can either be a tool for growth or a barrier to our personal and social development. In our personal lives, the ego can become a mirror, reflecting our self-image, desires, and fears. It can push us to strive for more, or it can trap us in a cycle of self-doubt and insecurity. In our social and family interactions, the ego is the invisible player in the room, influencing our relationships and shaping our reactions. But it's not all doom and gloom. The ego can also be tamed. By recognizing it, understanding its triggers and patterns, we can begin to reduce its negative impact. It's not about eliminating the ego, but rather learning to guide it in a way that enriches our lives and relationships. And let's not forget the silver lining. When harnessed correctly, the ego can be a powerful motivator, a beacon guiding us towards self-improvement and personal growth. It can push us to strive for excellence, to challenge ourselves, to step out of our comfort zones. Why is this important? Because understanding and managing our ego is a key component of personal development. It's a step towards becoming a better version of ourselves, towards leading a more fulfilling and balanced life. Remember, understanding your ego is the first step towards personal growth. Don't forget to subscribe for more insightful content.